Hey guys, welcome to Cigar Church, where our passion for cigars and our love for Jesus come together. And we are on my back porch on a beautiful evening. You're going to see a lot of distractions running around. We've got my dog Dakota. He's back over here right now. He's going to be the big black one. And we've got Steve and Tracy's two dogs. I'll let y'all introduce them later when they jump into your lap right in the middle of the service, right in the middle of the episode. Man, preacher mode's kicking in a lot today. Right in the middle of the episode. You'll see them running around behind us. So just say hi to them in the comments. But as you can tell, we're doing something a little bit different. We've got Steve and Tracy center stage because we want to address and go back to one of the topics we talked about in the very first episode way back in the day, season 1, episode 1, back when we had a low budget camera, low budget audio, and things just looked terrible. But we had something that day that we really feel very strongly about, and something that's very important to us, all four of us. Our hearts and what we think needs to be heard. And so we wanted to readdress it today and bring Tracy in as well. Now, you probably saw her on season 2, episode 1. She didn't say a word because Tracy's a little bit shy sometimes, but this is really good that we got her on here. You'll get to hear from her a little bit today. This is one of their dogs here. But before we jump into all of that, what are you guys smoking?
Oh. I am smoking a Fuente Opus X. Everybody knows about Opus X. Really great cigar, all Dominican. I mean, doesn't get much better than this.
You're right. You're right, it doesn't. That's a good cigar. Tracy, what are you smoking?
Nothing.
Nothing. Tracy's not a smoker, but she puts up with us smokers.
Yeah.
What do you got, Dan?
I have something new. I have the Aganorsa leaf Arturo.
Oh, yeah.
And this was different. It's got a Nicaraguan wrapper.
Okay.
I'm having to read this because it's like a laundry list. It's Nicaraguan and Esteli binder and a Jalapa and Gandeja filler.
Okay. And we're not going to tell anybody that you had to look those up on how to say them before we got on the show.
I'm telling you what, I was looking, it's so normal. It's like, okay, this is Dominican. Okay, it's Nicaraguan. I'm like, what is that?
What do we got here?
Jalapa.
Yeah.
And we actually had an argument on Jalapa because, being from a Latin area, we're like, Clay's like, it's probably Jalapa. And I looked it up, it's actually Jalapa. It's actually a city in Guatemala. So.
It's not jalapeno. It's not jalopy. It's jalapa.
Not a hot rod.
All right. So we learn something new every day. We learn something new every day. I'm smoking the brown label Tatuaje Kahonu, which is another one we had to look up to pronounce. I speak 2 languages, fellas, English and bad English. And everything else is make-believe in my mind. I can't figure it out.
You understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
But the 2012, it's a wonderful Nicaraguan cigar, and I kind of had to look it up too. It's been a long time since I've had one of these. It's a medium to full strength Mexican San Andreas wrapper, but binder and fillers Nicaraguan, so you'd probably like it.
I like the label.
Label's pretty simple and pretty straightforward and clean. And
good on it.
Really good smoking cigar, so I'm excited to have one of these again. And I think for the most part, I don't know about yours, but I know that Dan and I, these are products from ZT when we were over at ZT the other day. So once again, a shout out to Todd and the guys over at ZT. You guys are awesome. So with all that said, let's jump into tonight's episode. So like I said in the intro, we're talking about the difficult subject of depression. And that very first episode that we had, all the way back at the beginning of all this, we started with the story of your son. And so I'm going to shut up for a minute and turn it over to Steve and just let Steve kind of recap that, and then we'll just ask some questions and dig into it a little bit more. Steve?
It was hard the first time, much less I do it again.
I know.
Do I want to start? I'm sure where I want to start. We have 2 kids We have 2 kids. I had a son, and she had a son when we first married. They were at the time
4, 3, and 5.
Well, and we got him into sports early, and was really good. Especially Blake, my son, he really excelled in anything he did.
Everything.
Whether it's baseball, basketball, football. We put him in karate for about don't know, 2 or 3 months, and he entered a tournament and
Won.
won a trophy taller than Tracy.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Then later on, we entered him in a jiu-jitsu tournament when he was a white belt. Instead he was wasting his time going, he won. But his best sport was baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, we got really, really, really good. I know I'm a father, but I envision college,
Yeah.
whether it be a small college, big college. It was in his future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my father, his grandfather, they were really, really close. He went to all his baseball games. I mean, they were really tight.
Yeah.
And he got sick with leukemia. I didn't even get to the story yet. And passed away.
Right.
And it had a really hard effect on my son. And that's when it kind of took a turn. He slowly started getting in trouble and kind of dabbling in drugs, and we knew about it and tried to get him help. And it was hard at that time. You couldn't force, it still is that way probably, you couldn't force kids to get help. I mean, she
Yeah.
even, I'll let you talk about that.
We called everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote to our senators and everything, and nothing. It didn't help. But he started dabbling then, but it got worse over time.
Yeah.
And I mean, we even tried to avoid his home up in Tulsa.
Right.
He ran away. It just, we did everything we knew to do.
And it kind of got worse when he was playing baseball for his high school. He was a freshman, and he beat out a senior in his position.
Yep.
Well, that senior, turns out later, was also a drug dealer.
Okay. Okay.
So I think that played a part. This is big speculating, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so that's when he really started dabbling into some harder stuff, and which one night was on New Year's Eve prior to,
It was, 2010, 2011.
New Year's Eve, he went to a party and he took a pill we later found out called Opana, which is a slow releasing
But
pain reliever of some kind,
And
opioid.
But he smashed it up.
Smash it up.
Oh, yeah.
Took
Yeah.
it and drank beer, and
So in doing that, it all hit him at once
Yeah.
instead of,
but he was at home.
At his
He was at his mom's
mom's house, supposed to go to work the next day. He didn't wake up. She went in there and he was,
She
at that
thought he
time,
was. She thought he was snoring,
he was aspirating.
and he
Yeah.
was aspirated. And of course, she called and was.
I got on the phone and I
He
just
couldn't
knew.
understand. He knew. Yeah.
I just handed her the phone and I could,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
which led to going to the hospital. At first, he went to Southwest Medical Center. He was 17, so they
Said he needed to be in pediatrics.
pediatrics, so they
Yeah.
took him to Baptist
Yep.
and put him on the
Biggest.
ventilator they had. And he was on that for, I don't know,
A week, a few days,
Yeah.
at least.
and the doctors treated him. He had like 2 or 3 doctors. 2 of them thought he was not going to make it.
And he had multiple.
And if he did, he'd be a vegetable. And one doctor thought he would. He had multiple strokes from the CT, shown on the CT.
And and so 2 doctors didn't think he would make it, but the neurologist thought he would.
Okay. Okay.
So
They decided they were going to
they were
take him off the
gonna,
ventilator and see what happens.
that was a hard decision, because that was
Yeah.
Steve, me, and Blake's mother, and we all
Did not agree.
agreed. No, we
You did.
agreed.
You did. Good.
Because
Good.
we just felt like, I think somebody had said there are some things worse than death.
Sure.
And he
Yeah.
would have been a vegetable, and, because there was no brain activity at all. So,
Get a little dirt on your dog, right?
and so,
But the night before that, or
yeah.
before they did it, that night, I mean, close to it. It had to be close to almost the whole high school showed up.
2 by 2 went in, come out crying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go in, come out crying. And once they got through, we were waiting till the next day to take him off the ventilator. But it was that same night that a lady came in with a baby, and she walked up to Steve and said, "This is your granddaughter."
Wow. Wow.
And he broke, of course.
Of course.
And so we held her for a little bit, and and she had been
His
born.
accident was basically January 1, 2011. She was
Yeah.
born on the 3rd.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So just, what is that, 8 days before his accident?
No, a couple of days, right?
I don't know my
The
math.
3rd, yeah.
I went
the
to Bible
3rd.
college. I don't know math. So,
His accident was New Year's Eve, so basically it turned into New Year's when they found him. So
Yeah.
2011,
okay.
1st.
Okay.
So 2 days later, she was born.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So the next day, we did have a friend who played a guitar, and he went in there in the room and played his guitar and sang for him. He is a Christian guy who played Christian songs. And so the next day, I went in and I went to the nurse. I said, "Something's wrong," because he's kind of like gargling or whatever. And she said, "Well, they'll do that when they were taking him off the ventilator." So
Right.
they were slowly bringing him down off of it. And I said, "No, something's wrong." So she went in there and she looked and she said, "He's trying to get the ventilator out himself with his tongue."
Huh.
And we're like,
Okay.
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 So they got him off the ventilator. He still didn't wake up,
Right. Right.
but he was off the ventilator. So they moved him into a regular room. And I don't know, a couple of days, I guess he woke up, he opened his eyes, but he couldn't speak.
He was like in a daze, just
Yeah.
staring straight ahead.
Yeah, like he was just,
I got pictures. This is
yeah,
it's hard to explain.
it is. He just,
He's there, but he's not there, kind of.
Yeah.
Feeling. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and we had our friend come up and play some more. And
At that time, he was playing his music.
yeah,
Tears started rolling down his eyes.
Wow. Wow. Wow.
yeah. And after that, Steve told him, "When you get out of here,
No, that's not. At one time, eventually, he would stick his tongue out and he started communicating with him.
Yeah.
He wouldn't- if you asked him a question, he'd stick his tongue out to answer yes or no. That's all he could do. At that time, I don't think he was doing blinking that time. I think it was just yes or no. He stick his tongue out. So at that time, I said, "Would you?" I say when or if. I think when you get out of here, if you want me and you go get
Tattoos. together,
tattoos.
Yeah.
If that's what you want. You want that? He stick his tongue out. Yes. So
yeah, yeah." So they moved him over to a specialty hospital.
Yeah.
A doctor put him on Ritalin, and that woke his brain up.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, it was
Okay.
very interesting. I was like, really? But yeah, it woke his brain up, and they did a lot of physical therapy there with him, and he started getting to where he would laugh a little bit, but he still wouldn't talk. But he would laugh a little bit. And Smile, yeah. And then, I mean, he just kept getting better and better every day. I kept a journal of this every day, his progress. And at one point, one of his friends from school, she came up and she just pestered him.
no.
She did?
That's when he moved to his 4th location. That was Jim Thorpe.
No.
Yep. Yes, it was.
All right, we're gonna put the gloves on, and we're gonna go out back here and.
They sent him to Jim Thorpe. He had another couple of months of therapy.
Yeah.
He had to learn to walk, brush his teeth, take a shower. He had to learn everything again, feed
He was a
himself.
17-year-old baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Diaper, the whole,
Yeah.
everything.
He thought it was funny that I would have to go in there and wipe his butt. He thought that was funny. He laughed about that all the time. So yeah, he came home after that. The only thing he couldn't remember was, no, I think he remembered everything. He remembered all of it. But
He started with a wheelchair, then a walker,
they didn't think he'd walk.
and
But
a cane. Now nothing, but
yeah.
he still has some balance issues.
He's determined though. He was not going to give up. He was going to walk.
Yeah.
He was not
Yeah.
going to stay in a
Good.
wheelchair or use a
Good.
walker.
Very good.
So, so that's his story. He's done better. He lives on his own. And you know, his granddaughter goes over and sees him. And,
Yeah.
I mean, his daughter, our granddaughter. So he does have a brain injury. He does walk kind of funny. He does have eye problems. But you know,
I've never told you this before, but I mean, the story to go through was horrific.
Sure.
But one part of it I did enjoy. I'll get there.
You're all right. Take your time, brother.
I did enjoy, and I kind of miss is when, especially with Jim Thorpe, he was just so innocent. The McCormick, we got along so good. It was just early.
Yeah.
yeah.
It was almost like a new life, start over. Yeah.
But I think the thing we learned from it, or I learned from it, was when we were trying to get him help, I wasn't asking for help from God.
Interesting.
And once he was in the hospital, there was nothing we could do
Right.
but that.
Right.
And which is a lesson,
Yeah.
you know, that. But I mean, I don't know. It teaches you. You realize.
You know, Tracy, that brings up a really interesting conversation that I've had a lot with a lot of different people in a lot of different circumstances. The question, why did God do this? Why did God allow this to happen to my son? Why did God allow this to happen to my daughter? Why did it happen to my mom, dad, whatever the case may be? And to me, the biblical answer is really easy to come to, but it's not real easy to own. And the answer is God's not doing it.
Right.
The answer is that we live in a fallen world with the consequences of sin, and we've all committed sin, and it's not that this happened to your son because he committed some awful, atrocious sin or anything like that. It's this general judgment that's on all of humanity because all humanity is engaged in the act of sin. But the problem with that is then we start having other questions. So why God did you establish a system in the world that even has this? And God, aren't you good? Aren't you able to take that away? And you know, before the event happens, before that catastrophic event, the overdose, the car wreck, the suicide, the whatever, it's a what if, and then when it happens, it's what now.
Yeah.
And I think that moment, even though it may be the lowest moment of your life, it's when God goes, okay, now I didn't do this, but I'm going to step in and we're going to learn. We're going to everybody involved, from your son to you guys to his mom to everybody is given an opportunity to engage in this world in a different way. That causes them to think about their creator and think about who they are and
to be fully transparent, I mean, I never stopped believing in Jesus or God or anything, but it did kind of rock our relationship a little bit.
How could it not? How could it not?
I didn't drift all the way away, but it affected my relationship for sure. And it was that, and the church we were going to at the time was nowhere. There was no contact whatsoever.
Yeah.
Some of our older churches showed up, but
But the one we were at the time didn't.
Yeah.
So that was a kind of a turn off too.
Yeah.
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 And to keep being transparent, it's also
And what? That was baked in that will.
it's affected my relationship with my granddaughter
Oh, absolutely.
because I don't want to. I'm scared to get too close, and I don't want to get hurt again. And I didn't have this conversation with her about it.
How old is she now? So that was 2013.
13.
Oh wow, yeah. So she knows the whole story. Have y'all taken time to walk through that with her?
I don't know that we've actually walked through it,
The
but
whole thing,
she
knows
knows.
because she
Clearly, yeah,
she could
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she knows it was drugs.
She's really good with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's never known him any other way, which is interesting. You guys have the privilege of knowing pre and
Yeah.
post, and she just knows him how he is now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so for her, that's a little different.
Yeah.
When you started telling the story, there was a question that came into my mind that the first time you told the story, I didn't even think about. But as you got into it this time, let's go back to when your dad passed away. And you were talking about how your son was super close to him. They had a great relationship, best buds, that kind of thing. And that's kind of what set him on this path. Where was your heart during that time? Struggling with the loss of your own father. It's a two-way street, because here you've got a son that you're having to deal with that's becoming rebellious and making bad choices, but you're still dealing with your own grief of losing your dad to cancer, and as a pastor, I feel I get caught in the middle of a lot of things where I'm dealing with my own kids, or I'm dealing with my own family issues, or my own finances, or my own whatever, and somebody comes into the office and wants me to carry their burden too, and you're just like, oh. And you do, and so what was it like for you walking through that as you were grieving your father, but then also trying to deal with a child that was going off the rails?
It just threw our life through a loop. I mean, all the way around, it
Yeah.
not only changed those two things, it also changed our family dynamic. Because the holidays, everything just kind of, it was never the same. Not just for me, us, for everybody. It was just never got it back. To this day, we never got it back.
Now, was he the last of that generation in your family, or the first, or some? All of our grandparents on both sides of our family are all gone.
That was for me. That was for Blake. That he still had his. For our son, or for me?
Yeah, well, for you guys. I mean, all around for the family. Was that the first of that generation to pass, or?
Yeah, my mom was still
Okay.
My mom was still around, so yeah.
And his brother's still alive. and-
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You answer those. You got any answers?
So, Tracy, looking in from not the outside, because you're right in the middle of it, but he's not your son biologically. You've assumed the role of mother in many, many ways, as he's, as you're his stepmom, and you're seeing your husband go through losing his dad. Now you're seeing this go on with his son. Where are you at in all this? Where's your heart, and what are you wrestling with?
I was a very controlling person.
Yeah.
And so when something would happen, I would just jump in and take care of everything, which is kind of when Blake started on the drugs. I jumped in, and now Steve couldn't confront him. I confronted him.
Yeah.
And I just jumped in, and I was the one that was trying to find a place and everything. And I think I just kept busy with that stuff. And I think too, it's easier for the step parent to do that tough love than it is for the parent.
Sure it is.
And so I was the one that was pushing him to get better and to go to these places, and I took him everywhere, and that final.
And he would do good for a while, then.
Yeah. At one. Yeah. And we tried to keep him in the house. That didn't work. And the last before he had the accident, I'm the one that kicked him out.
Oh, yeah.
So that hangs with me.
Sure does.
Sure
it does.
Because I feel like, well, what if I hadn't? So he was like staying in his car at his mom's house in the driveway.
Yeah.
But, she was kind of like us. She had had enough. And
Yeah.
You know, there's so much more to it, you know.
Yeah, and
It wasn't
you know,
just that's the story. There was so much more before.
well, this is a years long journey for you guys that we're trying to cover in 45 minutes to an hour, and
Right.
we can't obviously get all of it there, and I'm sure if we brought his biological mom in, she would have a whole nother side of it to tell, and if he was here, he would have a whole nother side of it to tell, and so yeah, that's the interesting thing when we go through troubles and trials like this. One thing that I've always been intentional about at funerals is to make the point that everybody grieves differently, and everybody handles trials differently, and that doesn't make one right or wrong. And even in the same household, husband and wife, the same exact thing, going through it together. You're going to handle it different because of your personality, and Steve's going to handle it different because of his. And I think that's the beauty of marriage. That's the beauty of relationship. Is when Steve is, and don't take this the wrong way, but when Steve's not ready to call him out on it or to confront him, and you are, that you're filling in that gap.
Right.
And there was other times where you were filling in the gap on how she was handling it and that kind of thing. And that's where the strength of community comes in and lifts you up. So. Dan, you're being quiet. I don't want to force you into the conversation, but you got any questions or any thoughts on any of this, brother?
I've known these guys for a long time, so we've had conversations about it several times that I've had the opportunity to meet Blake. He's a great guy. You know, I think every time I hear the story, you know, what is accentuated to me is the tragedy of it. You know, what you talk about, you know, what kind of guy he was before, you know. With,
the thing that was lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's, there's definitely, you know, there's a tragedy in how the family changed, you know, how you guys changed, but there's also things that came out of it. You know, I would say there were things that probably came out as a, you know, growth, you know, maybe even spiritual growth to that degree.
But you're right about the tragedy of what he was and what he could have become,
Yes.
because after that we would see his friends that he played baseball with going
Drift
on
away.
to college,
Yeah.
or one of them going to play for a team, or, you know, and it's like,
Could have been him.
could have been him.
Could have been him.
And that was difficult, very difficult at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
As a parent, you feel like you're robbed of those days of the.
Yeah, and it's hard not to think about that, you know. So that's an important thing to talk about in this, is because when as we're talking about depression, the stories, the stories, the hub of our conversation about depression today. When you start talking about depression, one of the things that we need to talk about is this sense of loss. Is one of the biggest triggers for depression. Now, that could be the loss of a loved one, that could be the loss of a job, that could be a loss of a spouse, or, you know, a divorce, you know, some kind of loss is, and here's what I've learned on it, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't gone through it on the level that you guys have. It's not the fact that you lost something, it's the rumination on it, the going back to it and just dwelling on what it could have been, who it could have been, what, you know, who he could have married, or who he, you know, what kind of job, what kind of, you know, could he have been Division I college, could he have played in the majors, could he have, you know, all these thoughts, and you start what ifing yourself to death instead of focusing on what is. It's the what if, right? So when those thoughts came up, let's lean it a little bit more into the depression side. At what point did you guys start to realize that, you know, of course it's taking an emotional toll, of course it's taking a physical toll on you because you're at the hospital, you're spending sleepless nights, all that kind of stuff, but at what point did you guys realize that there's something much deeper that's taking root, that's going to be a longer term emotional distress in the form of depression?
I don't know. I think for me, we were so busy with him living with us and trying to teach him things and getting him ready. to move out on his own, because I was the one saying, what if we're not here? He has to do this.
Another what if?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he has to learn to live on his own. And
Talked with you before, I think, about if I'm gone and
yeah. So
stuff I do for him.
yeah. But to realize, when it's like, okay, this is as good as he gets, was probably for me when he finally moved out into a place where he could afford the rent. He could live on his own. He could do things on his own. I think that's where I was like, okay, that's
To a point.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what, if you're older, they have places you can go. But him and his age, disabled, it's hard to,
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
places for people in that situation.
Yeah, but I mean, I found a place right by where we lived.
Yeah. Good.
And it was like,
They don't take care of you. It's just a place that he qualified,
he qualified to get into.
Yeah.
at a lower.
Yeah.
and they were all elderly disabled,
Right,
so they
right.
were all calling him, hey, can you come do this for me?
Right, right.
So he got to know the people there, and
Yeah,
they would
absolutely.
bring him a bag of groceries,
Yeah.
or they would bring him,
Yeah.
stuff from the store.
And he's done really good as far as he's never, to my knowledge, showed any signs of depression that had happened to him.
Yeah, that was, I think
it was
that
easier.
very
It's
surprising.
harder on me than it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's understandable because it's out of your control and it's out of his control. But daily he gets a choice on what his attitude is on it,
Yeah.
and you're stuck with just the results of it.
Yeah.
And having to deal with it that way.
And it was depressing.
Yeah.
It was very depressing.
Yeah,
Still is.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's an ongoing battle.
Still have not got
Yeah, and we're
over it.
Yeah, I'm sure you haven't. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I think this is one of those things that we'll talk about scripture here in a second. Some of the scriptures that you've used to deal with it and help get through the struggle. But I think that's one of those things that just until we have total healing in heaven, and that day where you get to see Blake walking normal and talking normal and acting normal in his new heavenly body, and then you can sit down and have conversations about what happened and about all. I mean, to me, that's when the final healing and when you won't have to deal with it anymore. And to me, one of the most beautiful promises of Scripture is that all of that will cease. All of the struggle, all the pain will cease one day. Yeah, yeah. So what are some of those verses? Yeah, before we get into that.
And we do these. I do little videos, some shorts.
Yep.
It's not really
Yep.
shorts. They're too well.
The little
you don't
reels.
qualify for
Yeah,
shorts.
the reels and
I'll be some talk about some scriptures and anxiety, struggling, all that. I'm not just telling y'all. I mean,
Yeah,
that's for me too.
yeah.
I live it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
Yeah,
I ain't got it all figured out. I promise you.
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But as far as the scriptures, again, I told my son we get tattoos, and we did, and we each got a scripture with our tattoo, and mine was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He'll make your path straight. And it's easy to read sometimes, but it's really hard to do.
Yeah,
I try every day.
yeah, yeah.
But and the one we chose for him, and he was in on this too, is Psalms 18:17. He rescued me from my powerful enemy, from my foe who were too strong for me.
And when we did episode 1, we didn't talk about that one as much as we talked about the one that you got tattooed on. But what I find I was thinking about this before, just a few weeks ago, when we started talking about filming this episode. And I couldn't remember the exact verse, but this is a really interesting verse that y'all chose. Because the text, the enemy is someone else. In this case, the enemy was within and was inside him, and his own thoughts and his own depression and that. And that's the power of Scripture to me. I think this is one of David's Psalms, because he wrote a lot about this when he was running from Saul and when he was running from Absalom and all this stuff. And he was just depressed because of all these people that wanted him dead. But what happens when that enemy's in your own head?
Yeah.
What happens when nobody else is coming at you just your own thoughts. And that's got to be the hardest depression. That's got to be the most difficult.
Yes.
And so that's a great one that y'all use to help.
Yeah, it really fits.
Yeah, yeah. And so as we think about these verses, either one of those verses, where do you guys find comfort now? When you look back at those verses and you look back at the events that happened, and you remember why you chose those verses, have you seen God's faithfulness and His promise coming true from either of these verses in your life over the last, 10 years? It's been more than 10 years. 14 years? 13 years?
Almost 14, yeah.
My math was better that time. How has God been faithful through this?
I think God's always been faithful. I just wasn't in a mindset to receive it. But I think I've took some really good steps the last year, I think.
Good, good, very good, very good. Tracy, how about you?
Well, I can't really speak to the verses. What I can speak to is depression. We went through a lot last year.
Yeah.
And I broke. I was one step away from the hospital.
Okay.
And, but I took the step. Steve went with me. I went to the doctor and got on some medication. And I feel like people need to know that that's okay. It's difficult because you feel like nobody else knows and understands.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the problem with that is they do.
Yes.
They do understand, and you really have to reach out to get some help. And once you do that, you will stop listening to those voices in your head.
Yeah.
Whether it's medication or counseling or,
Community.
community,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Let me ask you a question in that. Has the voices gone away?
Yes.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I mean, for a lot of people, they don't. I know that voice is there. I think sometimes the need is to get more voices telling you the positive things.
Yes.
And at some point, they finally drown it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's they're not there now. And I think part of it is if it tries to creep in,
Yeah.
I throw it back out.
Yeah. Good. Good.
And I know that God is there. I know that I can ask Him for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I can speak to.
Good. Good. Very good. And those are, I just want to reiterate a couple of those things you said. It's getting help, swallowing your pride and saying, going to your spouse, going to a friend and saying, will you walk with me through this? I need somebody to hold my feet to the fire. I need somebody to make sure I go through with this. And I trust you enough that you're not going to use this as ammo against me, that you're going to help walk through this with me. And then following through with that and going and getting counseling and going and seeing a doctor. And a lot of times we've talked about this, a lot of times it's not just an emotional thing. It's a chemical thing that's changed in your brain that needs attention.
Right.
And there's too many Christians out there that say, "Oh, just pray it away." And yes,
Right.
there is power in prayer. Yes, the Holy Spirit is in our life and can fix it. And yes, that God is more than capable of taking anything away, no matter what it is. But a lot of times, God uses the things we've learned through medicine and other things to help us get right. And so don't be afraid. If you're at home and you are struggling with depression, you found this video and you don't know what to do, and maybe you've gone through something similar or something even worse or whatever, find a friend. If you don't have a friend, just go to the doctor, go to a counselor and begin that process. I promise you, you're not the only one. Everybody I have ever met has dealt with negative emotions, negative thoughts, depression, small, big, somewhere in between. And there's nothing shameful about needing help in a state of depression. One of the other things that you brought up that was beautiful in there is the idea of community. aloneness magnifies depression.
It does.
And I honestly think the devil uses that as a tool against us.
Yeah.
Because then when you start feeling that, you know, I'm the only one feeling this, and there's nobody around you to go, no, you're not, then you believe it. You believe it a lot quicker, and you fall into that trap a lot quicker.
And the thing with that is I'm a total introvert,
Yeah, you
and I
are.
like to stay home. But this cigar church and this community have now started to get me out of that, and I'm thankful for that.
And even though you don't smoke a cigar, that's what's beautiful about this. And we've had a lot of people reach out to us and just say, love your content, don't like the cigar stuff. But this is a perfect example. It's not about the cigars. It really isn't.
But this cigar is
Has
what helped
brought
me
us together.
get me out of my
Yeah, yeah,
depression I was going through.
yeah,
Yeah.
And you say
was a
about a
starting
year
point.
ago you started making some steps, and that was about the time you joined the lounge. Met some guys. I mean, you and Dan had already had a relationship, but met some guys and just started doing life together with other men that are imperfect as well. So. If you guys are struggling with depression, we just want you to know that we are here for you. Clearly, most of you guys, we may be living in other states, other parts of the world, and we're not there physically with you. But if you need prayer, if you need direction, if you need help, feel free to reach out to us. And I know that's not something you're going to probably do in the comments, but you can always send us an email, send us a private message on any of the social media platforms that we're on, and we would love to help you find the support and help that you need. You see the three of us, Dan, Steve, and myself, every week on Cigar Church, but you need to know there's ladies like Tracy and Dan's wife Kiesi and my wife Jennifer that you saw in episode 1 of season 2, and even JJ's wife Amanda J, who are willing to do things behind the scenes to help you find the help you need, and just know that we're all here in your corner and willing to help you in that way. Anything else you guys would like to add to this conversation?
No, I mean, I think one of the other things that struck me that, you know, we talked about at the beginning, you know, what Blake was going through with, you know, your dad's death, you know, he turned to self-medication.
Yes.
And
Oh, yeah.
that happens a lot.
Yes.
And, you know, it's important to understand, I think one of the things that we need to take away from this story is that that's not the way to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's destructive, and it's always destructive.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, if you're in that boat too, get some help. You know, whatever you got to do.
And a lot of times that comes from searches on the internet, looking up stuff on social media sites, and just believing anything that comes, you know, your way. And when you're in the midst of that depression, you're not going to make good choices. And so rely on other people that are on the outside looking in know more than you do, whether you believe it or not. I know in the times that I've struggled, when people have come to me and said, hey, this is a situation, you need to deal with this. And my first reaction is, who are you? You don't know what I'm going through. And then I sit back and go, okay, wait a second, they do. They understand better than I do, because I'm caught up in the middle of it. And I'm blinded because of my emotions. So yeah, good point, Dan. Very good point. How are those cigars, guys?
It's an Opus X.
It's an Opus X. It's got to be good. It's got to be good. Yeah. How's that Aganorsa leaf?
It's good. You know, it's a little different. It's definitely some flavors I've never had. It's a good smoke.
Very good.
Actually, playing and grab her.
Aganorsa leaf provides a lot of tobacco for other manufacturers, and so I think they know what they're doing. That's a pretty good cigar. And this Tatuaje is almost gone. It's been a great one. Definitely something I'll go back to again. Clearly the dogs are having a good time behind us, and they've behaved themselves well through this whole thing. Dakota's a little rambunctious. If you come to our Monday night Bible study, you know he kind of distracts us a lot. I think they're about done. So I meant to do this at the very first. Dan, tell us about our event coming up.
Yeah, we have an event coming up October 19th. It's our first annual Cigar Church experience. I'm having to compete here. Go to our website for more information. It is a free event to attend. However, we do have VIP, and there's gift bags involved.
Yep.
So, you know, check that out. And the first 25 that register get a free VIP bag. So hop on there.
Do it again.
Okay.
Hey, Dan, tell us about the event coming up.
Hey, on October 19th of this year is our first annual Cigar Church experience in Hochatown, Oklahoma.
Yeah. The booming metropolis of
There you go.
Hochatown.
Go to our website. All the information is there. It is a free event to attend. However, we do have VIP or a VIP
Only 50.
available.
Yep.
There's only 50, and the first 25 are free. So make sure that if you get on there and you sign up early, you'll be able to get a hold of one of those bags for free.
Yeah.
So go out there and check. As well, I'll say this: if you like the channel and you watch us, subscribe. It helps us out, helps the channel out. And tickle the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos drop.
Yeah, and share it. If you like what you're seeing, share it. That helps us even more. You know how all these algorithms work. Subscribing and liking and hitting the bell and all that stuff is great, but share it. And here's the point. The only thing for me that matters about subscription numbers and view numbers and all that is that's just more people that get to hear the gospel and get to hear things like our conversation today. That the more people that hear it, the more people that need to hear it have an opportunity to hear it. So share it. If you got friends struggling with depression, if you've got some depression in your own life and you want to put this information out there, make sure you're sharing this video for us.
And to piggyback off of Dan, like you said, the first 25 are free. The second 25 is at $25.
Yep.
We only have 50 VIP bags, and we're done after that. But you're welcome to come.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bring your own cigars.
And I'll tell you this. I'm gonna give you a little preview. That $25 VIP gift bag will have. I think that I was running some numbers yesterday.
It's more than 50.
It's more than $50. I think it's closer to $65 right now, if not more, is the value of it. There's going to be multiple cigars. There's going to be a T-shirt. There's going to be other things that I'm not going to mention just yet. But I promise you, if you don't get the VIP and show up, and somebody else is carrying that VIP around, you're going to be a little bit jealous. I'm just going to say that. It's going to be a good time. So we definitely want you to join us. As always, Steve always tells us,
If you got any prayer requests, put it in the comments or email us at contactcigarchurch@gmail.com or stevecigarchurch@gmail.com.
yeah,
If you want to reach out to my wife here about anything she's happy to say, I'll put you in contact with her.
yeah, absolutely. Do me a favor. After you're done watching this video, take a moment to continue to pray for Steve and Tracy and Blake, because this is just an ongoing journey. This is something that I don't know. Maybe a season or two from now, we'll have an update and we'll walk them through it one more time. But we know that an event like this is something that's going to be a lifelong journey for them to process through, and so we know that for you it's the same. So pray for them, and we'll continue to pray for you guys. And as always, smoke a fine cigar to the glory of God. We will see you next week.